The Cardassians' laughter turned to blood-curdling screams as the ESS Invictus decloaked amidst their fleet. Human weapons locked and loaded, ready to rain hell on the arrogant aliens who had foolishly provoked mankind. "I'll never forget the looks on those damn Cardassians' faces," Alexander Carter, the grizzled human veteran pilot of the dreaded stealth warship, recounted to a group of fresh-faced recruits. "They thought they could mock us, attack our merchant ships, and get away with it. They had no idea what humanity was capable of." In the early days of humanity's ventures into the stars, the established alien races viewed them as a joke. The militaristic Cardassians were the worst, openly ridiculing human ships and dismissing their military prowess. As tensions escalated, the Cardassians brazenly assaulted human vessels, confident that the inferior humans would be too spineless to strike back. But they had gravely miscalculated. Enraged by the provocations, human leadership secretly commissioned the ESS Invictus, a state-of-the-art stealth warship designed to strike terror into the hearts of any who dared threaten humanity's interests among the stars. Failure was not an option. The survival of countless human lives hinged on the success of the Invictus's mission. Carter, handpicked to lead the charge, was tasked with teaching the Cardassians a lesson they would never forget. As the recruits listened with rapt attention, Carter began to recount the details of that fateful mission and the moment when the Cardassians learned the true might of humanity. "All right, recruits, listen up," Carter said, his voice low and intense. "This is the story of how we made the Cardassians regret ever fucking with the human race. This is the story of the ESS Invictus, and the day we showed the galaxy what happens when you push humanity too far." "But we weren't done yet," Carter continued, his voice taking on a hard edge. "The Cardassians were reeling, but they still had their shipyards churning out more warships. We had to strike at the heart of their war machine." The recruits leaned forward, hanging on Carter's every word. "Using the intel we'd gathered, we set course for their most heavily guarded shipyard. It was a damn fortress, bristling with defenses. But the Invictus, she was built for this kind of mission. We slipped through their sensor nets like a ghost, weaving through their defenses until we were right on top of the shipyard." Carter's eyes gleamed with the memory of the infiltration. "I handpicked a team of my best commandos for the ground assault. We disembarked from the Invictus and made our way into the shipyard, ready to raise some hell." The veteran's voice grew louder as he recounted the intense close-quarters combat that followed. "It was a fucking nightmare in there. Cardassians around every corner, alarms blaring, shots flying. But my boys, they were the best of the best. We fought our way through, planting explosives on every critical target we could find." Carter's voice softened as he spoke of one soldier in particular. There was this kid, couldn't have been more than 20, Corporal David Jameson. He single-handedly held off a whole platoon of Cardassians, bought us the time we needed to finish the job. I'll never forget the look in his eyes as he laid down suppressing fire. No fear, just pure determination. The recruits sat in stunned silence as Carter described the team's harrowing escape, racing back to the Invictus as the explosives ticked down. "We barely made it out of there before the whole damn shipyard went up in flames. The explosions, they were like nothing I'd ever seen, lit up the whole fucking sky." Carter paused, his gaze distant, lost in the memory. "We'd done it. Destroyed the bulk of their fleet, crippled their ability to make war. It was a hell of a blow, one they wouldn't soon recover from." But the victory was bittersweet. The Cardassians, incensed by the crippling blow to their war effort, lashed out with vicious attacks on human border colonies. "We thought we'd brought them to their knees," Carter said, his voice heavy with the weight of memory. "But we'd only stirred up a hornet's nest." Desperate distress calls flooded in from the besieged colonies, begging for aid against the Cardassian onslaught. Carter and his superiors faced a gut-wrenching choice: reveal the Invictus and risk their most potent weapon, or abandon the colonists to a grim fate. "We couldn't just sit back and let innocent people die," Carter said, his fists clenched. "Not when we had the power to make a difference." The Invictus, still nursing wounds from the shipyard raid, raced to the colony's defense. Carter recounted grueling hit-and-run strikes against the Cardassian aggressors, the stealth ship dancing on a razor's edge. "We were pushing the Invictus to her limits and then some," he said, shaking his head. "Every system strained, every crewman exhausted. But we couldn't let up. Too many lives were at stake." Sacrifice became the Invictus's constant companion. Carter's voice cracked as he spoke of Lieutenant Sarah Nakamura, the ship's tactical prodigy, who died shielding a civilian transport from a Cardassian assault. Sarah, she was brilliant, fearless. She saw that transport's distress call and didn't hesitate, Carter said, his eyes glistening. Threw the Invictus right into the line of fire, bought those civilians the time they needed to jump to safety. But the cost... Through blood, sweat, and unyielding determination, the Invictus and her crew held the line. Battered and drained, they stood fast, a stalwart shield for the colonists until evacuation ships could whisk them to safety. "We did it. We saved them," Carter said, his tone a mix of pride and sorrow. "But the Invictus, and she was a mess, barely holding together. We limped back to Earth, patched up our wounds, mourned our dead." The recruits sat in reverent silence, absorbing the weight of Carter's words. The veteran took a shuddering breath, steeling himself against the flood of painful memories. Carter paused, letting the weight of his words sink in, the recruits still reeling from the tale of the Invictus's harrowing defense of the human colonies, leaned forward, eager to hear what came next. "As the Invictus limped back to Earth for repairs, we thought the worst was behind us," Carter continued, his voice low and grave. "But we were wrong. Dead wrong." He took a deep breath, his eyes darkening with the memory. "Our intelligence operatives uncovered a disturbing development. The Cardassians, those bastards, they weren't done. Humiliated by their defeats at our hands, they'd gone and forged a secret alliance with the Zorgan Empire." A murmur of unease rippled through the recruits. The Zorgans were notorious throughout the galaxy, known for their advanced weaponry and brutal conquest of weaker races. Earth's leadership was shaken, Carter said. The Cardassians were bad enough, but the Zorgans, they were a whole different beast. We knew we were facing a threat unlike any we'd encountered before. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. That's when the Invictus was given a new mission. We were to infiltrate Zorgon space, gather intel on their military capabilities and intentions. It was a suicide mission, but what choice did we have? The fate of humanity hung in the balance. Carter's voice dropped to a whisper, as if he were reliving the tense journey deep into enemy territory. "We pushed the Invictus stealth systems to their limits, evading Zorgon patrols at every turn. One wrong move, one slip-up, and we'd be dead in the water." He shook his head, his eyes haunted. "That's when we saw it. A Zorgon fleet massive, unlike anything we'd ever seen. They were massing on the border of human space, ready to strike." "We knew time was running out," he said, his voice urgent. "We had to get closer, learn more about their plans. So we made the call, took the Invictus in for a closer look at the Zorgon flagship." Carter's fists clenched, his knuckles white. "As we drew near, our sensors picked up something strange, an energy signature emanating from the flagship. It was a new weapon, something we'd never encountered before." He looked up, his eyes meeting those of the recruits. The dread that washed over us in that moment, I'll never forget it. We knew in that instant the true magnitude of the threat we were facing. This Zorgon technology, it could change everything. It could mean the end of humanity as we knew it. Carter's voice grew hard, determined. But we weren't about to let that happen. The Invictus, damaged as she was still the best damn ship in the galaxy. And her crew, we were ready to do whatever it took to uncover the secrets of that Zorgan weapon, to find a way to stop it before it was too late. He leaned back, his gaze distant, as if seeing the events unfold once more in his mind's eye. We knew the risks, knew the odds were stacked against us, but with the fate of humanity on the line, we didn't hesitate. We couldn't afford to. Carter's voice trailed off, leaving the recruits in stunned silence. The weight of his words, the gravity of the situation, hung heavy in the air. They knew, without a doubt, that the story of the Invictus was far from over. that the greatest challenges, the most daunting threats were yet to come. Carter leaned forward, his eyes glinting with the intensity of the memory. "We knew we had to act fast," he said, his voice low and urgent. "The fate of humanity hung in the balance, so we devised a daring plan to uncover the secrets of the Zorgon weapon." The recruits held their breath as Carter described the audacious operation. "Under the cover of a diversionary attack by our fleet, I handpicked a team of my best operatives. Our mission? To infiltrate the Zorgon flagship and steal the plans for their new weapon." Carter's voice grew tense as he recounted the heart-pounding moments aboard the alien vessel. "We covertly boarded the flagship, slipping through their defenses like ghosts. But once inside, it was a different story. We navigated labyrinthine corridors, evading patrols and security systems at every turn. One wrong move and we'd be dead." Carter's voice swelled with pride as he described O'Connor's bravery. Even as the Zorgons closed in, Liam never faltered. He hacked into their computer systems, his fingers flying over the controls, downloading the vital data we needed. Without him, the mission would have been lost. The recruits leaned forward, hanging on every word as Carter painted a vivid picture of their harrowing escape. With the plans secured, we fought our way back to the Invictus, blasters firing, the diversionary attack raging around us. It was a miracle we made it out alive. But the story was far from over. Carter's tone grew somber as he described the race against time that followed. As the Invictus sped back to Earth, our crew worked frantically to analyze the stolen data, desperate to find a weakness in the Zorgon weapon. The recruits sat in stunned silence, the enormity of the threat sinking in. Carter's voice cut through the tension, filled with grim determination. "With the Zorgon fleet moving ever closer to our space, we knew we were running out of time. We had to find a way to stop this weapon, to neutralize it before it could be used against us. The survival of our people, of every man, woman, and child on Earth, depended on it." Carter fell silent, his gaze distant, lost in the memory of those fateful moments. The recruits waited, their hearts pounding, knowing that the story was about to take yet another dramatic turn. Carter's face grew somber as he recounted the impossible choice that faced the Invictus and her crew. "We were racing back to Earth with the stolen Zorgon plans, our engines pushed to their limits, when we picked up an urgent distress call." His voice was heavy with the weight of the memory. A nearby human colony was under attack by Cardassian forces. They were desperate, pleading for help. The recruits leaned forward, hanging on his every word as Carter described the agonizing decision he had to make. "We had a duty to those colonists, to protect them from harm. But we also had a mission, one that could mean the difference between life and death for billions back on Earth." Carter's eyes were distant as he relived the moment. "I wrestled with the choice, knowing that every second we delayed brought the Zorgon fleet closer to Earth. In the end, I made the call to divert course, to come to the aid of the colony." The Invictus, damaged but unyielding, plunged into battle once more. Carter's voice was filled with pride as he described the fierce engagement, the skill and bravery of his crew as they took on the Cardassian ships. "Our weapon systems were more advanced, our crew more experienced. We gave as good as we got, fighting with everything we had to protect those colonists." But even as they fought, a shocking message came through from Earth. Carter's voice grew strained, his hands clenching into fists. The Zorgon fleet had arrived. Their planet-killer weapon was powering up, preparing to strike. We were out of time. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air as Carter described the impossible choice that lay before them. To stay and fight for the colony, or to leave them to their fate and race back to Earth with the intelligence that could save billions. Carter's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he recounted the decision that would haunt him forever. "I gave the order to withdraw, to abandon the colony and push our engines to their limit. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do." The recruit sat in stunned silence as Carter spoke of the anguish he felt, the weight of command bearing down on him, as he made the call that would leave innocents to die, but could potentially save countless more. "That's the burden of leadership," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "To make the hard choices, the ones that keep you up at night. to bear the cost of the sacrifices that must be made in war. As Carter paused, the room was heavy with the weight of his words, with the understanding of the toll that such decisions take on those who must make them. The Invictus raced on towards Earth, its crew carrying the weight of the lives they had left behind, and the desperate hope that their sacrifice would not be in vain. The recruits sat on the edge of their seats as Carter's tale took a surprising turn. "As we raced back to Earth, we thought we were prepared for the worst," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of memory. "But what we found was something none of us could have anticipated. The Zorgon fleet, with their planet-killer weapon primed and ready, was holding position, waiting." Carter leaned forward, his eyes intense. "It didn't make sense. They had the upper hand, the element of surprise. Why hesitate? But then it hit me. They were waiting for us, for the Invictus." He described the frantic strategizing that followed, as he and his crew desperately tried to devise a plan to stop the Zorgons and save Earth. "We knew we had to act fast. Every second we delayed was another second the Zorgons had to unleash their weapon. That's when we came up with a daring plan, one that could have been ripped straight from the pages of a science fiction novel." Carter's voice dropped to a whisper, as if he were reliving the tension of those critical moments. "We would use the Invictus's stealth capabilities to infiltrate the Zorgon flagship once more. But this time, we wouldn't be going for intel. We were going to sabotage that planet-killer weapon from the inside." He described the nerve-wracking journey back into the heart of enemy territory, the Invictus slipping silently through the Zorgon fleet's defenses. Every member of the crew knew the stakes. We were the last line of defense. If we failed, Earth would fall. As they drew closer to the flagship, Carter handpicked a small team for the infiltration. Among them was Mikhail Petrov, the Invictus' brilliant engineer. Mikhail was a wizard with technology, Carter said, a hint of admiration in his voice. If anyone could find a way to disable that weapon, it was him. With bated breath, the recruits listened as Carter described the harrowing journey into the bowels of the Zorgon ship. The team moved like ghosts, evading patrols and security systems, inching ever closer to their target. But as they reached the weapons control room, they found themselves face to face with an unexpected adversary. "It was Laros," Carter said, his voice dripping with contempt. "The Cardassian commander. He had thrown in his lot with the Zorgons." In a tense standoff, Laros revealed the shocking truth behind the Zorgons' hesitation. "They knew about our previous incursion," Carter said, shaking his head in disbelief. "They had been waiting for us to make another attempt, hoping to capture the Invictus's stealth technology for themselves." What followed was a desperate, brutal struggle, as Carter and his team fought to reach the weapons controls. "It was chaos," he recounted, his eyes distant. "Laros had brought a contingent of his best Cardassian soldiers. We were outnumbered and outgunned." But even in the face of overwhelming odds, Carter's team refused to give in. "We fought with everything we had," he said, his voice filled with fierce pride. Mikhail, in particular, was a force to be reckoned with. He fought his way to the control panel, his fingers flying over the keys as he tried to hack into the weapons systems. But Laros, seeing the tide turning, made a desperate play. "He lunged at Mikhail," Carter said, his voice catching. "I saw it happen as if in slow motion. I tried to intervene, but I was too far away, locked in combat with a Zorgon warrior." The recruits held their breath, fearing the worst, but Carter's voice, when he spoke again, was filled with awe. "But Mikhail, he didn't hesitate. He threw himself at Laros, grappling with the Cardassian with a strength I didn't know he possessed. He bought me the time I needed to reach the control panel." In a race against time, Carter inputted the self-destruct sequence, his fingers shaking with adrenaline. I could hear Mikhail and Laros behind me, locked in a life-or-death struggle. I knew Mikhail was giving his all to give us this chance. With mere seconds to spare, Carter initialized the sequence. I turned back to help Mikhail, but it was too late. Laros had him in a death grip, a cruel grin on his face. Mikhail looked at me, his eyes filled with a calm acceptance. "Go," he mouthed. "Finish the mission." Carter's voice was thick with emotion as he recounted the agonizing choice he had to make. I gave the order to retreat. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to stay, to fight. But I knew Mikhail's sacrifice would be in vain if we didn't escape. The Invictus, the crew, and Carter barely escaped the Zorgon flagship before it exploded in a blinding flash, taking the planet-killer weapon with it. We had done it, Carter said, his voice a mix of triumph and sorrow. We had stopped the Zorgons, saved Earth. But the cost... He trailed off, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. The recruits sat in reverent silence, the weight of Mikhail Petrov's sacrifice hanging heavy in the air. As the blinding light of the exploding Zorgon flagship faded, Carter and his crew looked on in stunned disbelief. They had done it. Against all odds, they had destroyed the planet-killer weapon and struck a crippling blow to the alien alliance. In the aftermath of the planet-killer's destruction, Carter continued, his voice raw with emotion, the Zorgon and Cardassian fleets fell into chaos. Their ultimate weapon, their trump card, was nothing more than debris, floating in the void of space. They turned on each other, accusations and recriminations flying as they sought to lay blame for the catastrophic failure. The recruits leaned forward, hanging on Carter's every word as he painted a vivid picture of the alien forces in disarray. Our fleet commanders saw the opportunity and seized it with both hands. With the enemy reeling from the loss of their flagship and their leadership, we launched a coordinated counterattack, striking at the heart of their formation. Carter's voice swelled with pride as he recounted the epic space battle that followed. Our ships, Terran and Allied alike, engaged the enemy in a desperate struggle for survival. The Zorgons and Cardassians fought back fiercely, but they were a force divided, their coordination and cohesion shattered. He spoke of the incredible bravery and skill displayed by the human pilots, men and women who flew their ships into the teeth of the enemy fire, putting their lives on the line to protect Earth and all she represented. The Invictus, battered but unbroken, joined the fray, Carter said, his eyes alight with the memory of the battle. We used our stealth capabilities to strike at key enemy targets, sowing further chaos and confusion among their ranks. Our crew, each and every one of them, fought with a courage and determination that defied description. As the battle raged, the tide slowly but surely turned in favor of the human forces. The Zorgons and Cardassians, for all their advanced technology and brutal tactics, were no match for the tenacity and indomitable spirit of humanity. I'll never forget the moment we dealt the crushing blow to the Cardassian fleet, Carter said, his voice filled with grim satisfaction. It was a combined assault, spearheaded by the Invictus. We hit them hard and fast, shattering their formation and sending them fleeing into the void like the cowards they were. With the Cardassians in full retreat and the Zorgons in disarray, the human fleet pressed their advantage, driving the alien forces back from Earth, liberating the besieged colonies, and securing a momentous victory for humanity. As Carter finished his account, the recruits erupted into cheers and applause, their faces alight with pride and admiration for the heroes of the Invictus and the sacrifices they had made. But Carter, his expression somber, held up a hand to quiet them. Remember, he said, his voice heavy with the weight of memory, the cost of this victory was high. Many brave men and women, including some of my own crew, gave their lives to protect Earth and its people. Their sacrifice will never be forgotten, and it falls to us, to each and every one of us, to ensure that their deaths were not in vain. The recruits fell silent, the gravity of Carter's words sinking in. They knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that they were part of something greater than themselves, a legacy of courage and sacrifice that stretched back to the earliest days of humanity's ventures into the stars. As the gravity of Carter's tale settled upon the recruits, a heavy silence filled the room. The grizzled veteran's eyes, once alight with the fire of battle, now seemed haunted by the spectre of the unknown. He leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. In the days that followed our victory, as we tended to our wounded and secured the system, a chilling discovery was made, Carter said, his words heavy with the weight of memory. The Invictus, The ship that had been our sword and shield had drifted away from the fleet. We thought she was just badly damaged, but when we sent a boarding party—" He trailed off, his gaze distant. The recruits held their breath, the tension palpable. "They found her empty," Carter finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The crew, my crew, had vanished without a trace. It was as if they had been plucked from the very fabric of space and time." He paused, the silence broken only by the hum of the room's ventilation. "The only clue we had was a message, left behind on the ship's computer. Just a few words, but they chilled me to my very core." Carter's eyes met those of the recruits, and in that moment they could see the depth of his fear, the scars left by the unknown. "They are coming," the message read. "The darkness cannot be stopped." A shudder passed through the room, as if a cold wind had blown through the very walls. "We searched for them for weeks, for months," Carter continued, his voice strained. "But we found nothing, no trace, no sign of where they had gone or what had happened to them. In the end, all we had were questions. Questions and a gnawing fear that, despite our victory, something far worse lurked out there in the darkness of space." Carter's voice grew stronger, tinged with a grim determination. "I've never stopped searching for answers. But as the years went by, as the scars of war faded, the truth became clear. We may have won the battle, but the war is far from over." He looked out at the recruits, his eyes piercing, as if seeing through them to the challenges that lay ahead. "There are things out there, things that even the Cardassians and the Zorgons fear, and one day they will come for us. We must be ready." With those final words, Carter fell silent. The recruits sat stunned, the weight of his tale settling upon their shoulders like a physical burden. They looked to each other, seeing their own fears and doubts mirrored in the eyes of their comrades. For they knew deep in their hearts that the path ahead would be fraught with peril, that the sacrifices of heroes like Carter and his crew were just the beginning. And as the image of the Invictus, once their greatest hope, now a haunting spectre, lingered in their minds, they understood the true weight of the responsibility that had been placed upon them. The fate of humanity, the very future of their species, would rest in their hands, and they would have to be ready, ready to face the darkness that lurked beyond the stars, ready to make the sacrifices that would be demanded of them. Carter's voice echoed in their minds as they filed out of the room, each lost in their own thoughts, their own fears. The Invictus, once a symbol of humanity's strength, now stood as a grim reminder of the challenges they would face, the lengths they would have to go to protect their world, their way of life. As they stepped out into the light of day, the recruits knew that their lives had been forever changed. They had been given a glimpse into the true nature of the universe, the darkness that lurked at its edges. And they knew, with a certainty that chilled them to their very core, that the battle for humanity's survival had only just begun. The sun beat down upon them, but they barely felt its warmth. Their minds were consumed with the images of the Invictus, adrift and abandoned, a ghost ship haunting the void. They thought of Carter's crew, the brave men and women who had given everything to protect Earth, only to be swallowed by the unknown. As they thought of the message, those chilling words that hinted at a threat beyond their wildest nightmares. "They are coming," the words echoed in their minds, a sinister mantra that they could not shake. "The darkness cannot be stopped." As they walked, each step heavy with the weight of their newfound knowledge, the recruits knew that they would have to be strong, stronger than they had ever been before. For the darkness was coming, and they would be the ones to stand against it. They would be the shield that protected humanity, the sword that struck against the unknown. They were the inheritors of Carter's legacy, the guardians of Earth's future, and they would not fail no matter the cost, no matter the sacrifice. For in the face of the darkness, in the face of the horrors that lurked beyond the stars, they knew that failure was not an option. Humanity would survive, would thrive, no matter the odds, and they, the recruits, the next generation of heroes, would be the ones to ensure it. As they marched forward, their steps in unison, their hearts beating as one, the recruits steeled themselves for the battles to come, for the long road ahead. They had been chosen to carry the torch to light the way through the darkness, and they would not falter, would not fail. For they were human, and the human spirit, the indomitable will that had carried their species to the stars, would not be extinguished. Not by the Cardassians, not by the Zorgons, not by whatever nameless horrors lurked in the depths of space. They would fight, they would endure, they would prevail, for the sake of Earth, for the sake of all they held dear. The recruits marched on, their eyes fixed on the horizon, their hearts filled with a grim determination. For the fate of humanity hung in the balance, and they were the last line of defense, the final hope in a universe filled with darkness and despair. Carter watched them go, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what lay ahead. He had done his part, had given them the tools they would need to survive. Now it was up to them. The future of humanity rested in their hands. And as he turned his gaze to the stars, to the vast expanse of space that held both wonder and terror, he could only hope that they would be strong enough, brave enough, to face the challenges that lay ahead. For the darkness was coming, and it would take all of their strength, all of their courage to hold it at bay. The recruits disappeared into the distance, their forms fading into the shimmering heat of the horizon. But their presence lingered, a palpable force that filled the air with a sense of purpose, of destiny. They were the future, the hope of humanity. And though the road ahead was dark, though the dangers were great, they would not falter. For they were human, and the human spirit, the unbreakable will that had carried them through the ages, would not be denied. Carter closed his eyes, a silent prayer on his lips, a prayer for strength, for courage, for the will to endure. For the battle had only just begun, and the darkness, the unknown, the horrors that lurked beyond the stars, would not rest until humanity was but a memory, a footnote in the annals of the universe. But they would not succeed, not while heroes like the recruits, like the crew of the Invictus, still drew breath. For as long as a single human heart beat, as long as a single soul dared to dream, to hope, to fight, the light would never be extinguished. And in the end, when the dust settled and the battles were won, it would be humanity that emerged victorious, a beacon of hope in a galaxy consumed by darkness. Carter smiled, a grim, determined smile. The future was uncertain, the path ahead fraught with peril. But one thing was clear as the sun that beat down upon him, as clear as the stars that twinkled in the vast expanse of space. Humanity would endure, would thrive no matter the odds, and he, Alexander Carter, would be there to see it, to bear witness to the triumph of the human spirit. For he was a soldier, a warrior, a guardian of Earth, and he would not rest not until the darkness was banished and the light of humanity shone bright across the cosmos. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.